What's up, Dissolving Fear family? I am so excited for today's podcast guest, and I know you will love this episode. I have author, college professor, and sports psychologist Dr. Mitch Abrams here with us. He's joining us from the East Coast, which I love because I'm from Pennsylvania and I grew up on the East Coast. And he's here to help us learn how to use our anger and frustration to actually get what we want in life. So if you feel like you have strong emotions, but they hold you back, or they drain your energy, or they simply end up front and center running the show, tune in. Dr. Mitch Abrams, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you for having me, Alyssa. I hope we're going to be covering some things that I think people will find very useful.
I'm so excited to have you here today from New Jersey. Tell us a little bit about yourself. You help athletes and professionals use their big emotions like fear or anger to enhance their performance and enhance their lives. And you're also a professor and a prison psychologist at Rutgers University.
Yeah, so my day job, for lack of better terms, I'm the chief psychologist in the prison system in New Jersey. I've been there for 25 years, actually 26 years now. And my private practice is sport, clinical, and forensic psych. So I'm one of the few people in the country that has sits at that interface between forensic work and sports psych work. So a lot of people come to me, and anger management being a primary thing that I specialize in. A lot of people refer people to me either because the person is caught up in a domestic violence issue or some kind of explosion elsewhere. And when I first got into the field, I thought, oh, wow, I really have to stop preventing people acting like idiots. And and what I came to appreciate is, yeah, that's part of it. We certainly want to reduce transgressions, but the other side of it that people don't talk about is that by befriending and harnessing your emotions, especially anger, you can do things that you couldn't do otherwise. So it's about leaning into it and welcoming it and learning how to use it rather than, just kind of popping off all over the place and seeing bodies laying in your wake. And I think that whether people are dealing with anxiety or anger or any intense emotion, if we don't learn how to modulate those emotions, it's going to lead to collateral damage and us not achieving as many things as we could in life.
Mhm. I'm glad you're here with us today. I am going to dive into our discussion about anger, fear, and what we can do with these big emotions to make our big dreams a reality. And first, we'll run through the podcast intro. Imagine living fearlessly. You're focused on the people, places, and things that you love, and you're letting go of the rest. Welcome to the Dissolving Fear podcast, where fear doesn't run the show, you do. And fear doesn't run this show. I'm your host, Miss Alyssa Shirk. And if you're new here, I'd like to welcome you to the podcast. I share amazing guest interviews and stories from my own life as a mom, life coach, and teacher, and someone who is thriving despite anxiety. As you grow stronger and evolve, your fears can dissolve. So follow this podcast. You'll love the results. Loving life is what we're all about here at the podcast and at missalyssa.com. Enjoy today's show and visit missalyssa.com to join my free monthly newsletter and explore life coaching options. All right, Dr. Mitch Abrams, you are the founder and CEO of an organization called Learning Excellence for Athletes, where you teach athletes and other professionals how they can manage their anger for their own benefit. But you don't just work with athletes, you work with inmates, as you were talking about. And you say that everybody can be angry. Moms are upset, parenting is hard, high achievers are frustrated, and especially men have a lot of anger issues. Why are we so dang angry? Do people have a variety of reasons we're angry, or do we all have similar reasons that we get frustrated?
So it's a complicated answer. The simplest answer is that we're hardwired to be angry. People forget that the sympathetic nervous system, which is where your fight or flight response lives, is hardwired into us. And anger and fear are nearly identical physiologically. You really can't tell the difference between the two. The only way you can is with galvanic skin response. And we don't carry those machines around very often. The difference between fear and anger is the thoughts and the behaviors. So for anxiety, you're running away from it. And when it's anger, you're looking to go on the attack. So, in fact, many of the skills that we use to teach people how to manage their anger are similar to the skills that are used to manage anxiety. So we're all hardwired to be dealing with anger. But I think that the difference is we're not allowed to be angry. The reason why I titled my book, I'm Not Effing Angry, is because so many people would come to me and I'd say, wow, what's going on? What's upsetting you? And their response would be, I'm not effing angry, yelling at me. Clearly, they are. I think that one of the secrets that everybody knows but doesn't want to say out loud is that there's shame that people attach to anger. You're not supposed to feel that way. And I understand why people might have that experience because unchecked anger can lead you to do destructive things. But you're certainly not going to get better at managing it if you can't own it first. And so to go down the list, we're hardwired. So we're anger is a part of who we are. There's no such thing as a bad emotion. The question is how much is going to help you. Um, there's shame that's attached to anger that interferes with our ability to own it and harness it. And I think that there's also differentiation, Alyssa, that there's certain direct triggers that would piss all of us off. Someone punches you in your nose, you don't usually say thank you, that was great, right? Someone says something that's really demeaning, most people would respond. But the secret to do an anger management work is really understanding people's indirect triggers. And those are very individualized, have to do with your own insecurities. And the more you understand that, the better you're able to recognize when you're starting to escalate. Most people don't realize they're angry until they already have gone over the line and done something that they regret. So the goal is early detection. And in order to do that, you have to know where your triggers are. And anybody who's been in a relationship knows that people that know you very well know your triggers and they could play your buttons like a piano. And what I hope to be able to help people do is to become non-provocable. I think that that's real power. Real power is when someone is trying to piss you off and you don't take the bait. And similarly, if you're able to recognize when you're having a bad day and there's been several things that have accumulated and you're like, you know what? I'm a raw nerve right now. I need to stay away from people that I care about, give myself a little chance to decompress, use skills that we teach, and give people an opportunity to modulate their emotions so that they're best able to use them.
So when I think about like being non-provocable, you work with inmates, I think about like if you're an inmate, you don't want to fly off the handle every time somebody like calls you a name or triggers you. And so you want to keep like a poker face and a strong persona, and you want to be non-provocable and non-reactive. But then I also think, because I work in a high school, I love my job. I'm a special ed teacher. But I also think how, like, sometimes if I'm frustrated just at work, like, I don't want to stuff those emotions down inside because I feel like that causes like stress and illness.
Absolutely. Yes.
So, how can we be non-provocable, like, without stuffing that stuff down inside and feeling like we're going to explode? Because I feel like that's not healthy either. I'm thinking about like relationships where if you have to walk on eggshells with your husband, and he's always trying to like bait you into fights and he likes the drama. I'm talking about my ex-husband right now, but anyway, we were married for 10 years and like he likes that and he has that with his girlfriend, and it's like this gorgeous on and again off again relationship based on fighting and making up. I can't do that. So for those of us, like some of us, we don't want to be in a relationship where we're walking on eggshells. We'd rather just get divorced and live a peaceful life. But how do we like become unprovocable without like just, you know,
Stuffing it. Yeah. So
masking our
so
emotions? Yeah.
so two things, Alyssa. One, with regards to the inmates, one of the interesting things, and it's true about high school boys as well, they're very sensitive to issues of perception of respect and power. And so there are some inmates that certainly don't want to be provocable. These are the movers or the shakers. These are the ones that run the show. They're not the ones that are running off and fighting all the time. But there is something to be said for being perceived as dangerous. because really the toughest guy in prison never has to fight because no one wants to challenge them. And I think that a lot of men, especially young men, are so insecure they try to puff out their chests as a way to prevent having to fight. So there are some people that are smart enough to be unprovocable, and there's others that get reinforced for being provocable because then they have a fight and then people know not to mess with them. Now, how does that play out in relationships? What you just said, I thought was really, really astute. Because if you're saying, Doc, all right, I don't want to be provocable, then what does that mean? I have to stuff my emotions? Well, if you stuff your emotions, you're basically compressing the spring, right? And I talk about this in my book that if you do that, what's going to happen is you're eventually going to get to an explosion threshold. And then you're going to pop off. And it's usually the straw that breaks the camel's back is one of the stupidest, littlest things. And everyone thinks you're crazy for why you're reacting the way you are. So your body keeps track of all of the annoyances during the day, even if your ex-husband would have liked to pad that list more than others, right? So you wake up in the morning and you realize, oh crap, my alarm didn't go off and I'm running late. I'm already a little bit irritable. Now, the best thing we could do is get ourselves back down to baseline, but we don't do that. Then we run to our car and we spill a little coffee on ourselves. We're annoyed about that too. Then someone cuts us off, and this continues. And the average person is compressing that spring, exactly like what you're talking about. And what we're trying to do is it's all about preventing the explosion because once someone explodes, there's not a lot that you can do. Medication, physical restraint, and letting it run its course. That's really only the options. So everything is about preventing getting it there. So the way we prevent that compressed spring from exploding on us is we bleed the valve. It's a pressure cooker, but there's a pressure valve on top, and we can bleed it. And the way we bleed it is by learning skills to help us get back down to baseline, whether that's diaphragmatic breathing, whether it's progressive muscle relaxation, imagery and visualization. Here's one for you that your audience is going to probably be surprised that I'm saying. How about picking your phone up and scrolling on TikTok for about 15 minutes? Everyone's like, oh my God, no psychologist is allowed to say that. The thing is this. It is helpful to distract yourself when you're pissed off. The problem is that if you're not careful, you'll find yourself, social media is like a casino. There's no clock and they're pumping. I'm sure that there's oxygen coming out of your phone that just keeps you stimulated for hours. The thing is, you set yourself an alarm and you go and do something mindless for about 15 minutes and you find, if you're watching, I don't know, dogs talking to infants, how upset can you be after you watch that? Or are you listening to soothing, relaxing music? The point I'm making is that we have to have tools in our toolbox that are at the ready in advance so that we can bleed that valve. Because what you said is 100% correct. If we do not, it will cause more stress and it will eventually lead to problems with your health, whether it's inflammation disease, heart disease, GI issues. And so we want people to be as effective as possible. And I don't know how you can do that if you're not managing your emotions
Mhm.
effectively.
I love that idea. Set the alarm on your phone. Give yourself like 15 minutes to scroll the dogs and cats, talking to babies or whatever. And that is a good way to decompress. I love education nowadays. I've worked in education my whole life, and I worked at an elementary school for 5 years. And that was where we really taught a lot of skills, like these decompression skills to the kids. Like the podcast is called Dissolving Fear, but really it's about like dissolving the anger. And like you said, we do it bit by bit. We might, show them a little like self massage that they can do and help them take deep breaths. And
Right.
we have all sorts of stuff. What's it called? Little shark fin. We do like a shark fin deep breathing and just whatever. And
Okay.
we have to learn those skills, how to dissolve the anger and frustration for sure. Because sometimes we can't just like walk out and quit a job and say, okay, I'm done with that frustration. Like sometimes we have to deal with it. And you've worked in prisons. How did you get involved in this work? What exactly do you call your work? Do you call it anger management?
It depends on where I am. But I also want to say something first about the issue with anger that I think that most people will inherently know, but they don't allow themselves to say out loud. First off, nobody gets in trouble for being angry, ever. Like if I said to you, listen, tell me about the last time you got in trouble for being angry. I mean, you're a grown woman. Who are you going to get in trouble with? But the point I'm making is that most people think that they get in trouble for being angry. You could be angry right now, but I don't know it because there's no behavioral analog. People sometimes get in trouble for the things that they do when they're angry, which is very different. The behavior and the emotion are not the same thing. And what we know about emotions is that they help performance. So anger, and anybody who's been good at angry knows you feel pretty powerful when you're pissed off. And
Mhm.
it feels good, but it's also scary because it could be dangerous. And what we know is that there's a curvilinear relationship, which means that as anger and any other emotion increases, performance increases until it gets to a certain point. And when it's too high, all your cognitive processes go in the toilet. So you can't make good decisions, you don't have fine motor coordination. And so what we're trying to do is we're not telling people don't be angry. We want people to go up to that red line, but not over it. So that means befriend it. Don't be ashamed of it. In fact, if you talk about kids, I think one of the most motivating things that kids experience is someone, so long as they have a reasonable sense of self esteem, when someone doubts them and says you can't, oh yeah, watch me. In fact, I don't think there's anything more motivating than
Mhm.
that, oh yeah, watch me. And guess what's fueling that? Anger.
Mhm.
So we don't, when I say anger management, what we're really talking about is reactive aggression prevention. We're preventing you from acting in ways that are destructive to you and other people.
Mhm.
Not don't get angry. The easiest way to piss people off is say, don't be angry, and then they get angrier. So that also says something about how we advertise the work, right? Because when you say anger management, who's going to say, by the way, I went to Dr. Abrams for anger management and I'm so proud of it? People don't want to admit they have a problem with anger. When they do, the work is actually very easy because now it's about, I want to be the most powerful person I can be. And I know that my anger gets in the way sometimes. And then when we analyze it, in fact, Alyssa, the most consistent thing that happens when you do an anger management work is they come in expecting to be shamed. They expect you to wag your finger at them and say, you're a piece of crap for thinking that way. It's
Mhm.
most often they're telling me things I'm like, wow, if I were in a situation, I'd probably be pissed off about that too. So it's
Mhm.
not that you're crazy. It's
Mhm.
that you don't want to get so upset that you interfere with your ability to do what you want in life. And so sometimes you have to change the way you're talking about the work because there's stigma that's attached to it. Who wants to say, by the way, I went for domestic violence treatment versus I went for relationship issues?
Mhm.
And I think that what happens is very often people will come in and they say, well, I really don't want to be here. My wife said that she's going to divorce me if I don't come here. And I'll say, all right, well, do you want to get divorced? No. Well, then I guess you want to be here. And then you ask the person, do you have problems with your anger in anywhere else except in your marriage? If the answer is no, then they don't have an anger issue, they have a relationship issue. And I think that there's a difference between when there's anger in relationships and nowhere else versus people that are having these anger episodes everywhere, every walk of life. Their spouse, their children, their family of origin, their job, their friends, everybody gives them a wide berth. But I think that what people don't realize is most all of us have anger management skills. They're just not always as well developed as we'd like.
Mhm.
Otherwise, we'd be in fights all the time. You ever walk down a crowded street and wonder why more people don't bump into each other? Because we pick up social cues. That person I want to stay away from. That person, you know. And so we navigate life with more skills than we give ourselves credit for. And honestly, not to blow smoke in your direction, but a lot of it has to do with schools. Teachers, look, you have anger management skills come from three places: physiology, that's genetic; the home, and the school. And there's tons of kids that have problems at home and they're saints at school. You know why? Because the teachers are able to give structure that the parents are not able to. And structure makes kids feel safe.
Mhm.
So the point is that most all of us are learning anger management skills all along the way. Even the most violent people in the world are only violent maybe 2% of their waking life. It's not like everyone's walking around being axe murderers. That's not how it works. And so we have to give ourselves a break and realize life is hard, relationships are hard. We're all going to get pissed off from time to time. In fact, if you followed me around, you'd be going, Really, Mitch? You're an anger management expert? I'm like, yeah, I lose my shit sometimes too. You know why? Because I'm human. And people will sometimes say, oh, you work with athletes, you work with inmates. What do they have in common? They're human.
Mhm.
And humans sometimes struggle with managing their emotions well. But
Mhm.
that's all right. It's a work in progress. As long as we're continuing to get better than we were yesterday.
You're very empowering. You're not like an anger management coach. You're like a self-empowerment coach. And I mean, that's what athletes need. When I think about my 13-year-old, he's an athlete. He's on the soccer field. If people start provoking him, if the other team starts calling names and provoking him, I want that to boost his focus. I want that to boost his performance. I don't want him to get a red card and the ref is
Exactly.
kicking him out because he's freaking out. I want him to be focused and I want it to like boost his performance.
Well, I mean, you can tell him I said this. When someone starts trash talking, you should be smiling to yourself. When people are trash talking you, what they're doing is they're saying, I don't think I can beat you physically. So I have to try to get your mind off the game. As soon as that happens, you already won. Now you should know they're chasing you. You're not chasing them. You are in control here. So a little boost of confidence, and now we're going to go handle business. And these poor guys are going to have to look at the scoreboard later. Look, um, sports are a wonderful thing. I mean, there are so many people that like try to slander competition, like it's not good for the soul. You could drop a drone anywhere in the world and you're going to see people playing some kind of sport. It's endemic to the human condition. Competition is a wonderful thing, and competition and cooperation are not mutually exclusive, as evidenced by team sports. But the goal is if if you want to win, however you define win, however you decide success, you want to be able to harness your emotions and be in control of them, not be a slave to them. And I think that that's what happens too often. Someone gets inside your head with the goal of getting you so angry that the things that you could normally do with your eyes closed, you struggle with. I want people to be able to perform their best. And yes, what you said, I appreciate you saying it because, as far as I'm concerned, everything that I do with my clients is about empowerment. They don't need someone in their corner going, yeah, you're right. There you are, a piece of crap. No, 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 no. What is it that you're trying to do? Let's not lose track of focus here. And how can we help you be more likely to get that next time? I mean,
Yeah.
it's important to validate people, but that's not good enough by itself. And people don't want a pity party, right?
Yeah.
They don't want, oh, poor you, your life is so horrible. It's like, wow, you've been through a lot. I hear, I understand why you're having a tough time. In fact, when I'm talking about the treatment of trauma, I'll often tell, because trauma is all about anxiety.
Mhm.
Trauma symptoms are all about dealing with the fear, the irrational fear that people have hurt me in the past, so people are going to hurt me in the future. And so everything is about avoiding that. The problem is you can't outrun your demons. And when you turn to face them, it turns out they're not as big and scary as you think, right? And so what I'll sometimes tell people is as long as you are still symptomatic, the person or the people that have done things to hurt you continue to have control over you. Aren't you tired of that? Aren't you fed up? Because the work is going to be hard. And if you want to get through it, that anger can help you. We have so much shame that's surrounding anger that people do not use it as a tool. You know, it's kind of like this might be a little bit provocative to say, but you know, if you take out a knife, you could stab someone with it, or you could cut your food. The knife by itself is a tool. A gun is a tool. It can be handled responsibly, it can be handled irresponsibly. Anger is like those weapons. If it's not wielded by a skilled person, it can be dangerous. But like everything else, the more reps, the more practice, the more you actively think about it, the better you get at it. So use anger as a tool to help you get what you want out of life. Because if you don't, anger is going to be there anyway, and you're probably going to spend a lot of time saying sorry. I don't like apologizing. It's not a lot of fun. I mean, when I'm wrong and I need to, I do. But I would much prefer to avoid doing things I have to apologize for. So I try to be intentional about what I'm doing and why.
Mhm. Do you use the same tools and methods and advice for anyone who's angry? Like, athletes, inmates, moms. Do you have different advice and tips for different people? Because I would say like maybe sometimes people externalize their anger and they throw a fit and they act like a toddler, but then some of us like internalize our anger and we might self-sabotage or just like turn on ourselves.
Excellent point. The simple answer, the skills are the same no matter who you're working with. What's different is their cognitive approach, right? In the old days, you used to see it more often that boys were socialized to externalize and girls were socialized to internalize. So girls were more likely to be dealing with depression and anxiety, and boys were more often dealing with anger. In 2025, I don't think that that's the case so much anymore. We see a lot of angry women and we see a lot more depressed men. But I think that it really depends on what their style is, what their cognitive distortions are, where their insecurities are. I'm working with a golfer right now who is as sweet as can be, and her parents raised her so well. She's demure and polite and respectful. And I'm like, where's the fire in you? And she won't let herself do it. And I'm like, listen, kid, you couldn't be mean if you tried. You absolutely welcome your anger, use it, be aggressive. And then there's other people that are spilling all over the place, and you're like, all right, we got to reel that in, right? So you have to pay attention to what people's personalities are, what their styles are, what their history has been. People that have trauma histories sometimes internalize and sometimes externalize. And so you make a good point. The skills are the same, but the approach is different depending on where the person's coming from.
Is there like one skill that you could share with my listeners today that they would be like, that they would know, I'll try that. I'll try that next time I'm angry. Because some of us like we're angry when we're driving. I'm not really one of those people, but some people have the road rage and some people get angry in relationships because of their mom issues or whatever. So if somebody is prone to anger for whatever reason, like for me, I get so frustrated with technology. Like I'm not very good at it. And I get so frustrated and then I don't want to do it. I just want to avoid it or hire somebody to help. Anyways, do you have any tips for anger?
Well, I think yes, but it falls into two categories. The first thing is don't expect any tip to work if you haven't practiced it before you need it,
Ooh,
right?
yeah. Yeah. Don't just try it in the moment.
Yeah,
Practice.
right. I'm angry and I'm at a red light, so I'm going to, someone just cut me off, so I'm going to do downward dog, a yoga pose while I'm driving. No, that doesn't work, right? Yeah, you could turn the music to maybe smooth jazz that'll chill you out, or ocean sounds, or you could take some deep breaths. But the thing is, practice the skills that help you relax before you need them. That's one thing. But the other thing is, see, because the second thing I'm going to tell you is very valuable, but you can't do that until you've re-engaged your brain. And in order to re-engage your brain, you have to turn it down just a little bit. The question that we should be asking ourselves is, does this matter?
Mm.
Most often we get pissed about things that really, in the scheme of things, aren't that big a deal. In fact, whenever I argue with my wife and lose, um, she'll often get to a point that she's decided the argument is over, regardless of whether or not I'm still angry. And what she says, which is very disarming, but also true, is, do you realize we're not even going to remember this argument 3 weeks from now? I love you, you love me, we've been together for a long time, we have a good life. This doesn't matter so much. And I think that there's two pieces to that. One is we don't always keep track of how irritable we are because of all those annoyances that get to us all day. And the other thing is that we lose perspective. I think that one of the skills that I teach in anger management is prediction of consequences. And people, when they're angry, often don't have appreciation to a future orientation. So I would ask people, so long as they're not so hot that they can't think clearly, what is it that you want? It sounds like such a basic question, but if you ask somebody, what do you want? You're gonna find out so much. It's such a simple question. What do you want? What is it that we're trying to achieve here? Because I think very often when we get angry, we become our own worst enemy. And we should not lose track of where we're trying to go in life. And most often, we're getting annoyed by things that really just don't freaking matter. And if it doesn't matter, we have to let it roll off our backs. Some people are naturally better at that than others. My daughter, who's 17, I've never seen her more upset more than 15 minutes in her life. She has a unique ability. I don't know where she got it from because I'm not good at this, and my wife is certainly not good at it. But she's always got this perspective of where am I going and what do I need to do, and I'm not going to stay upset about this. I can't change what already happened, and I got things to do. And I think that we sometimes get distracted and bogged down by things that don't matter that much. So we should try to ask ourselves, does this matter, and what do we want?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, pay less attention to what everyone else is doing and more attention to like where are you going? Where are you headed? Like literally in your car or in life. Like I'm focused on where I'm going and I'm not focused on what other people are doing.
As best you can. But we're also social beings, right? So how we interact with people and how they interact with us affects us.
So I think we kind of covered this, but how is your approach to anger management different from other therapists and other authors and what they might advise?
So the author's point is actually fairly easy. I think most authors approach anger management from a descriptive approach rather than a prescriptive approach. They try to explain the experience rather than telling people what to do. What
Mm-hmm.
my style is that I think is different than other people is most anger management experts are immediately trying to change you.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not trying to change you. I'm not. First off, I already presume that you know more about life and your life than I know about you. But it all starts with validation and empowerment. I do a lot of that at the outset. And when people come to me and say, Doc, I was literally thinking about killing this person yesterday, not like metaphorically, like seriously, I thought I was going to be calling you from jail. And having worked with people that are very violent, when I say, all right, let's talk about it, there's almost a feeling of shock. People are not expecting their therapists to go, I'm okay with the fact that you wanted to kill someone yesterday. It's actually it people that have really worked in the trenches know that over the course of most people's lives, they'll consider suicide at some time or another. It's part of the human condition. Doesn't mean you're going to. But if the answer when you say you're thinking about it is I throw you into a hospital, your response is going to be like, all right, well, I'm not telling him that next time,
Exactly.
right? And when
Yeah.
someone comes to you and says, look, in that moment, I wanted to smack my wife in the head. And when the expert is in response saying, well, that's good that you're able to tell me you feel that way. There's a good chance that your wife probably feels that way about you too sometimes.
Mhm.
But the fact that we're talking about it and you're not in jail means that you have control, that you're not as screwed up or crazy as everyone accuses you of being. Now, it is important to know that there are some people that are on the far spectrum of anger issues, and they have antisocial personality disorder, and they do not care about people's feelings or laws or anything like that. And how you treat those people is very different. But even in prison, most of the people that I meet are actually fairly decent people that have done bad things. People have this idea, they have this image of what an inmate looks like, and they've never been in prison. So they just see what they see on TV.
Mhm.
So to me, it all starts with the ability to sit in the moment when people are really struggling. Because I think that the two hardest conditions for humans to deal with, it's not anger, it's not anxiety, it's loneliness and feeling misunderstood. And people that struggle with anger are both a lot and usually at their own doing. And so when you say, "Hey, how's this? It sounds, how's this working out for you? Are you happy with your relationships? No. Are you happy that your kids don't want to be around you because you're blowing up all the time? No. Well, that's great." They go, "What? What do you mean it's great?" Well, because you could do something about this. No
Mhm.
one forces you to act a certain way. I love when people say, well, she made me angry. I had no choice. No, she did that. You got angry in response to that. If you say that other people make you angry, then what you're saying is they control you. So it's all about empowerment, taking back your emotions and using them constructively rather than destructively. The skills that we teach, a lot of people teach them. Um, but I also approach things from a trauma-informed approach, as well as a psychodynamic approach, which talks about how unresolved conflicts and traumas from early in your life can have a great impact on how you see the world. That's why when you're dealing with personality disorders, simple anger management usually doesn't work because it's not just a skills issue, it's a how you see the world in relation to others. So when you work with some of the most dangerous people, you start to learn that we're all human and we're doing the best we can. And there's lots of things that motivate us.
And some of it is just like we do the things that we see as a kid, or we say the things that we watched our parents say, like I used to work at the elementary, and I'd have little ones that were like, I'm about to get like really mad, and like their dad says that, like that's their dad is like, you better watch out, like I'm getting so mad. And people just kind of repeat what they see at home. And but sometimes I feel like we get mad at ourselves. How do we cope if we get mad at ourselves? Because um, like it's just so easy to make mistakes. And then some people, we hold it against ourselves and we get mad that we made that mistake and we maybe even got injured on the sports field. How
Right.
do you deal with like people like that?
Acceptance.
Yeah.
Acceptance. Um,
Self-compassion, acceptance.
exactly. It's like, come on, give yourself a break. But the thing is, Alyssa, you're touching on something that's very sensitive and important. There's a difference between being upset with yourself and having low self-esteem.
Mm-hmm.
Low self-esteem is not something that just gets established in adulthood. Low self is first off, let me say everybody struggles with low self-esteem. The most confident people in the world are the ones that have better abilities to keep it hidden. We all struggle with not being good enough. And so I think that for those that have had really difficult childhoods where they have not had the validating mom and dad that said, "Hey, you are valuable, you are worth something, you are a special person in your own right." You're going to be at a very big disadvantage throughout your life when someone treats you right, ever thinking like you deserve it. But so long as the person has reasonably intact self-esteem, then it's about self-compassion. It's about being fair to yourself. Like I said before, if you followed me around, you'd be really, Doc, you're an expert. No, I screw up. I screw up. We all screw up. This doesn't have to be a character assassination. In fact, I think that it's one of the most important things that needs to be said about parenting. The easiest way to parent your children in a healthy way is to focus on the behavior that's unacceptable and don't attack their character, right?
Mm-hmm.
You're not a bad kid. What you just did was bad. There's a difference. And I think that that's one of the things that we often do to ourselves. Instead of saying, "Wow, I'm really not proud of that. That wasn't my best work. I feel horrible that I did that." We start making these global characterizations like we're horrible people, which is not true. It's not true. We're doing the best we can. I wish I could have done that differently. And I'm going to try to do better next time. Look, I say this quite often. I was just talking about this to in another podcast not that long ago, where there was a situation not that long ago with my son, my 15-year-old son. Actually, it was a couple of years ago at this point. But I overreacted to something he did. He needed a talking to. He needed a four. I gave him like a 304, right? And I said afterwards, I said, "Logan, man, I got to tell you, I'm sorry. That was on me. I was irritable. I was cranky about other things. You did need a correction, but I was heavier on that than you deserved. And I'm sorry. And I'm going to work hard to not do that again." And I did that for two reasons. Not just because I was wrong, and not just because I wanted to apologize to him and he deserved it, but I also wanted to model to him he doesn't have to be perfect. Dad's not perfect. You're not perfect. We're going to do the best we can. So stop being so hard on yourself. Um, the world is hard enough as it is. If you're not in your corner, who the hell is?
Mhm. Yeah, and don't label yourself. I like that because we don't want to label our kids like, you're bad or you're stupid. And we don't want to do that to ourselves. We don't need to do the
Absolutely.
labeling, and the all or nothing thinking like, okay, I made mistakes. So now I'm bad with money or I'm officially screwed. Like, you're still alive. And actually, there's two athletes who I love. Have you heard of the Woodhalls? They're married, Hunter Woodhall and Tara Woodhall.
No.
They're Olympian athletes. She's like a long jumper, and he's a para Olympic athlete. So he doesn't have his bottom legs. and they're like the cutest little romantic couple. But, I feel like I look at people like that, and because I'm a special ed teacher, I look at people with any disability and I'm like, you could be mad at reality. You could be mad at life. And sometimes like we're just arguing with reality. Like we are, we do the best with what we got, and we can't get mad at ourselves for like our situation sometimes.
Well, but that requires some maturity. In fact, in the beginning of the book, I talk about how I was the poorest kid in a very poor neighborhood.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was fortunate in that my family was money poor but family rich. And
Mm-hmm.
so that was really good and really bad, meaning that um, even though it absolutely sucked for birthdays to come and holidays to come and not get presents, but I couldn't be angry at my parents because they were so loving to me,
Mm-hmm.
right? So what did that leave? That left me angry at the world, right? And so then, that sets the stage. But you want to know something? It does suck to be poor. It does
Mm-hmm.
suck to be disabled. It does suck to be sick. But the thing is that we also have decisions on how we're going to shift our perspective. Yeah, I've worked and know plenty of disabled people that are way healthier than most of the people I know.
Mm-hmm.
It's like when I was in graduate school, there was an adult home nearby for Down syndrome young adults. And in fact, they so refused to be considered disabled that instead of calling Down syndrome, they called it up syndrome.
Yeah.
And so it's really about the perspective we have. I mean, if you want, you could look at the glass always being half empty.
Mm-hmm.
And the question is, it goes back to what I said before. What do you want and how are you going to go about getting it? And I think that when people are goal driven, kind to themselves, and fairly aggressive, because when I say aggressive, I don't mean hurting people, I mean tenacious, passionate, I will not be denied, then you could get anything. But you can only do that if you also will forgive yourself when you screw up, because you will, because we all do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I do have a question about parenting. It can be frustrating, it can be tiring, and sometimes it can be downright infuriating. I think you have like a whole section of your website about parenting. So, how can my listeners who are parents let off steam and try to get less frustrated with parenting in the first place? Because that's something that, like, we don't know how it's going to go. We have a kid, we have no idea what they're going to be like, if
Yep.
they're going to be hyper, or, if the kid's going to be angry themselves. So, what's a parenting tip?
Well, the first thing is you have to be thankful for your kid doing what they're doing. Russell Barkley, who's one of the top ADHD experts in the world, has a clip on YouTube. I don't even know when it was recorded, but it's been getting a lot of traffic lately. It's beautiful because he talks about how children, including ADHD kids, are the result of the genetic mosaic of all of the generations above them, right? They are who they are. They're not who they are because you're a bad mom or he's a bad dad. Certainly, how we react to our children is going to have impact on how they act. But very often people are like, this little ball of cells didn't come with an instruction manual, and I'm pretty sure that I got the wrong instruction manual for this model, right? Parenting is hard, but it's supposed to be hard. It's the hardest job in the world. And you don't get paid for it until years later, hoping that you did the right things. And the truth is, you're going to get it wrong a lot. First thing is normalize the fact that you're angry because parenting is frustrating. Second, learn a little bit about developmental psychology and determine whether or not your kid is acting exactly how kids that age are supposed to be acting. The terrible twos that everybody talks about. No, the terrible twos are a developmentally appropriate, curious kid who's going into places that you don't want them to go. And instead of going, wow, I'm so lucky that my kid is developing normally, we just don't want them to experiment with the bleach, right? It's difficult, but I would say most people these days have heard of the timeout procedures on how you discipline children when timeout. The more important tool is the reverse timeout, The reverse timeout is when mom realizes or dad realizes, I'm too angry right now to be effective as a disciplinarian. And so long as the child is safe, right? Dad, can you keep an eye on Junior for a little while? I need to go get my level back. Remove yourself. Give yourself 15, 20 minutes. So here we go again with the clock and the phone, right? Give yourself the opportunity to remove yourself and de-escalate because being frustrated is completely normal.
Mm-hmm.
Completely normal. I mean, if you're not angry, you're not paying attention. So normalize it, but also realize that you cannot parent effectively when you're furious. It's one of the worst kept secrets about corporal punishment. It wasn't that long ago that corporal punishment was the way to discipline. It wasn't one of the ways, it was the way. And then psychologists came along and said corporal punishment is bad. It causes violent kids and low self-esteem. Well, we pretty much eradicated corporal punishment. Do you see kids that are less violent now and higher self-esteem?
I
No.
don't I don't see a lot of violent kids at my school, but yeah, corporal punishment, that's when like the teachers used to be able to smack kids with a ruler, right?
Well, but it's the extreme that's the problem. This is the point. The point is that most discipline strategies work if their intention is to help people learn.
Mm-hmm.
If you're going to spank your kid when you're angry, you're going to spank them hard. The goal is to teach them, not to hurt them.
Mm-hmm.
And so parents have a responsibility to recognize when they're getting too angry to be effective, calm themselves down, maybe remove themselves from the situation. Because, by the way, your kids are learning anger management skills by what they see of how you manage your anger.
Mm-hmm.
You see it on the sports field all the time. The coach yells at the kid for losing their losing it when they're yelling at the top of their voice and saliva's flying everywhere and their animals out of control. And then when the kid acts that way, they're surprised. So, not surprisingly, parents that have anger management issues often have kids with anger management issues. And they think it's genetic. It's not genetic. You don't have the skills or you're not choosing not to use the skills to de escalate. So, why should your kids? You're teaching
Mm-hmm.
them how to do it. And so, I want my kids to be better than me. So I want to teach them the skills, and I also want to own the fact. See that? See that parenting that dad just did? That was horrible. And I'm going to work on not doing that again. And I want you to remember this so that you don't do those things. And I also want to do the best I can to give them so many great experiences, so many experiences of validation that the blips on the screen of when I got it wrong just fall away by comparison.
Yep. Any relationship, parenting, love, it's like you are investing and you're putting the money in the bank and you're making deposits and having quality time and complimenting each other and reading and cuddling at night, like with my kids, so that when something happens and you have to discipline, you still have this bank full of like fond memories and good rapport with your
Exactly right.
people. Yeah.
Yeah, actually, prison really taught me this. I've worked with a lot of people that have had pretty much every problem that you could possibly face in life. Like nothing says that they should even be alive. And they're still fighting. People are remarkably resilient.
Mhm.
Remarkably resilient. And we live in times that everyone is so fragile and so precious, and oh, we have to worry about your self-esteem. More often than not, the kids are going to be okay. You just have to give them the opportunity and the direction. I mean, to
Mhm.
me, the biggest problem right now is children don't have enough accountability.
Mhm.
They do whatever they want, and the consequences are fairly meaningless. And
Mhm.
so the respect for authority is not what it was when I was growing up. And I think that's a big factor in how and why parents are so frustrated when they're having difficulty with their kids. It is
Mhm.
hard, hard goddamn work to parent.
Mhm.
And so you got to give yourself a break. You're doing the best you can, and you're going to get it wrong sometimes. And by the way, it is the reason why children who come from single parent households are at greater risk for almost every problem under the sun. Because there are single moms that are unbelievably effective, but at what price? It is really, really hard. In a perfect world with mom and dad, or mom and mom, or dad and dad, I don't care, with two parents in the house, it's hard to raise a child under the best of circumstances. So how much harder is it going to be if a parent's doing that alone? or if a child has a significant illness, or the mom or dad has something going on, right? I mean, life happens. But we should not lose track of the fact that we tend to be a fairly resilient bunch, especially if we're kind to ourselves.
Your book is actually titled, I'm Not Effing Angry, Adjust the Flame to Get What You Want and Need. Why do we as humans sometimes deny that we're angry at all? Like you said, why do we say, like, I'm not angry when we clearly are?
Because people don't respond in a validating way. If you're angry, therefore you're a piece of crap. And which is ridiculous because you show me someone that's never gotten angry, and I'll show you someone that doesn't interact with people. You could put Mother Teresa in a Department of Motor Vehicles, and you'd see an angry person, right? So everybody gets angry. It may not manifest the same way, and there's some people that are more prone to anger and displays of anger than others. But I think it's horrible the shame that we throw on it instead of just going because the response to I'm not effing angry is of course you are. It's okay. What are we going to do about it? How long do you want to be upset, and how upset do you want to be? If you want to get on with life, let's move to do other things.
Yeah, like we can acknowledge the anger, and then it's not going to stick with us like longer than necessary. Like if we're afraid of the anger, we're going to not know how to manage it. But like you said, we can bounce back from these big emotions and bounce back in like 10 minutes versus 10 months later.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And when we welcome the anger in, we can summon it to get things done that we wouldn't do otherwise.
So a bunch of people, including Brené Brown, have said fear makes an excellent catalyst, but a terrible lifelong companion. Do you feel the same way about anger? Like it can empower us, it can help us focus to actually get things done, but carrying it around can burn us out. It's like this fire, and you talk about adjusting the flame.
I think that the piece that she missed is that it's not the emotion, it's the quantity and the pervasiveness. Bits of fear are necessary for life. Bits of anger are necessary for life. It's like if we consider anger like a hot coal, the longer you hold it, you're going to get burned, right? So I don't see anger as, in fact, I see it as not something to avoid. Why do we have to damn ourselves for it? It it should be our friend. It should be part of the human condition. We don't need to run from it. We need to master it. And that's the issue. You can't master it unless you accept it. And I don't think we do enough talking about it. I mean, this is why these conversations are so important to me. I hope that people will have some sense of relief, that they'll go, holy crap, you mean all this time I wasn't crazy? Yeah, yeah. Or you're just as crazy as all of us. I think we should welcome it and master it so that we're less likely to be destructive with it.
Hmm. I love that. And so lastly, like, can you give us one more example of how we can adjust the flame in the heat of the moment? Harnessing our anger or dealing with an annoying person or a frustrating coworker. How can we hit the pause button before we get triggered and react and give ourselves a little time and space?
Great. So it all comes from self-awareness, right?
Mm-hmm.
You need to be able to recognize how your body changes when you start to get angry. And by the way, it's the same way your body changes when you start to get scared.
Yeah.
Your heart rate increases, your breathing rate increases, your muscle tension increases, you start to sweat, you maybe get a little bit shaky. That and recognizing your triggers should be the key to say, hold the phone. I am not going to overreact here. But when I say hold the phone, I mean that quite literally. One of the things we're trying to do is increase the time in between stimulus and reaction.
Mm-hmm.
Give us an opportunity for our emotions to go down a little bit and re-engage a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes for people in business, I'll say, your phone has a hold button for a reason. There's nothing wrong with saying, hey, can you hold on a second? I got another call. Hold. There's
Mm-hmm.
no one there. I'm just calming myself down.
Yeah.
Or you're talking to your ex-husband and he's really working your nerves. And you don't want to let him know that because then he's going to feel empowered and then be more of a jerk. Hey, can you hold on a second? I just have to use the ladies' room.
Mm-hmm.
I'm on hold. Go to the ladies' room. Maybe you go to the bathroom. Maybe you put a little cold water on yourself, or maybe you just give yourself a little space.
Hmm.
Recognize that you are more in charge of your interactions than you realize.
Hmm.
Recognize early that you're getting hot. Disengage, cool down. Remember your mission. What am I trying to achieve here? What do I want? And what puts me in the best position to get there? Usually being in a rage is not that. Now, interestingly enough, there are times that it's in your best interest to act like you're in a rage when you're not.
Hmm.
You want to be the master of your own domain. You want to be the person to adjust the flame on your emotions. And the reason why I use that, someone, Colin Jonoff, who's a buddy of mine, I did a podcast with not that long ago. He said, "Well, so how do you flip the switch on anger on or anger off?" I said, "I don't think it's a switch. I think it's a dial, and we need to master that dial." The
Hmm.
metaphor that I use is steak. Are you a vegetarian by any chance?
No.
All right, good. Because, well, not that there's anything wrong with vegetarians, just the metaphor doesn't work as well.
Okay.
There are a few things that make me happier than a good steak. And I like my steak rare. So I want it nice and crispy and succulent on the outside and juicy on the inside. The key to cooking a good steak is heat. In fact, high heat. But what happens if you can't adjust that flame? You don't cook a good steak, you wind up making it well done. It becomes a piece of leather. Anger is just like that flame. We want to be able to be in control of the dial so that the heat is at the right level to help us get what we want. And
Yeah.
when we're able to do that, you're going to find yourself achieving things that you didn't think are possible.
Emotional control. I have loved this interview because I feel like it empowers us to say, like, I can handle this situation that pisses me off. I can handle my emotions rather than like, oh my God, why do I have to handle this? Why am I feeling like this again? Why is life so hard? Like, it just is challenging and
Yes.
we can rise to the occasion.
And if you want to not engage, that's okay too. Nothing says you have to fight all the time.
Yeah.
This is a choice. This is everything that everything is about empowerment. And when we realize how effective we can be, then you start beating yourself up about why you haven't been. Well, because you underestimated your power.
Yeah.
Don't give away your power. Recognize how effective you can be and make it so.
Yes, choose your battles. We don't always have to deal with everything, but if we know better, we'll do better. If we know a little bit better about how to deal with things and handle them, we'll do better. And you've helped so many people improve their lives, like from inmates to athletes. What do you hope your book teaches people, and how do you want it to empower people?
I want them to feel relief. I want them to stop beating the crap out of themselves for having bad moments.
Mm.
Um, I don't know anybody that can say that they handle all of their situations the way they want. And the people that say that are clueless. Be kind to yourself. Allow yourself to be angry. Allow yourself to be frustrated. Life is difficult, but we can decide how we experience that. I often will take the most difficult clients on because I see it as a challenge. If I don't do good work, the worst case scenario is I'm like everyone else. When you achieve greatness, when you aspire for greatness, the worst case scenario is you're good rather than great. Be kind to yourself, be aggressive, go after what you want. When you screw up, forgive yourself, evaluate, modify. But realize being angry is part of being human. You don't have to beat yourself up about it. Instead, learn to adjust the flame so that you're in control as much as you can be of your situations, and you'll find yourself winning in life a whole lot more.
Well, Dr. Mitch Abrams, thank you for being here. Tell everyone where they can find your book. Where can they find you online?
So my website is drmitchabrams.com. The book I'm Not Effing Angry um, is available on Amazon and Barnes and Noble and major book distributors. And I'm often sharing my opinions on social media, most commonly on X, formerly Twitter, at Mitch Abrams PsyD, where I talk about all types of things, especially related to anger and what's going on in the world these days.
Well, thank you for helping us stay productive and focused, even despite big emotions. That completes our episode for today. Thank you for being here at the podcast. If this content felt true for you, follow the podcast today. Leave a rating and review on Apple Podcasts. You can explore over 90 episodes of the Dissolving Fear podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and everywhere you listen. Thank you for being here, and check out missalyssa.com for one-on-one coaching, free resources, and my free monthly newsletter. Thank you, Mitch.
Thank you.